Okay. So our next speaker is Mr. Bruce Falk, who is a project management trainer, master trainer, actually, and professional speaker. Highly recommended by Mr. Carl Pritchard. Had a long career at IBM and 30 years experience in risk management, which puts him right up there with Carl for some reason. Anyway, I'd like to introduce Mr. Bruce Falk.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. I appreciate it. Realizing that I am the only thing at this point between you all and your favorite adult beverage, I'll try to go as quickly as possible here on this. And Matt, if you want, I can just share my screen. I assume that's how you want to do this. Okay.
That'll work.
All right. So I'm going to make me. So hello, everybody. I'm going to make me go away because you don't necessarily need to look at me, but bear with me just for a moment. And let me go ahead and bring up the presentation here. Whoops, that didn't work. Let's try it again. Someone else is sharing, so I think I gotta have you stop sharing, or I guess Michael stop sharing before I can share. Oh, there we go. Let's try it again here. There we go. Got it. Bingo. All right. So actually, what Michael was talking about here is a marvelous lead-in to what we're going to be looking at right here. And because he was talking about problems that you may be solving, that the higher up the food chain you go, the harder the problem gets, the longer it takes. That sort of thing, and he even said, which just really resonated with me, the fact that the problems may actually outlive your tour. So that's a marvelous lead-in here to this topic, and I know that your concept of the day here was pivoting your purpose. So one of the things that I'd like to do here is to take a look at another way of thinking about things, and looking at something that do we actually have a problem to solve, or something called a polarity to manage. Right? Now, if you've ever had a situation where you got a problem, and you work at it, you come up with a solution, and you fix it, and it goes away, that's great, right? But then a week or two later, it comes back. So you fix it again, right? And it goes away, but then it comes back next month, and so you fix it again, and then it, goes away, but then it comes back. Well, maybe what you have there, folks, is not a problem that you're going to be able to solve, right? Maybe what you have is that polarity to manage. Okay? Now, over on the right-hand side, well, okay, obviously we have a picture of the globe here. So let me just ask you this, and this is a rhetorical question, of course, but we got the North Pole and we got the South Pole, right? Which is more important, the North Pole or the South Pole? I'll let you cogitate on that for a second. Well, I know you're sitting there thinking, well, that's kind of a stupid question, Bruce, because, we got to have both poles, right? Because the world's got to, rotate and stuff like that. So, and that's true. It's not either the North Pole is more important or the South Pole is more important. Both poles are important. We have to be able to deal with all those. So all of your topics today, folks, starting off with Carl, talking about the imposter syndrome, and then dealing with how to do all this effectively, how to pivot effectively, and dealing with conflict, and doing the upskilling that you need with like individual development plans, and then even trying to go from government type work or military type work into the civilian sector. All of that, this can play with all of that, right? So let's take a look at what a polarity is, right? So very simply, polarity is just a set of opposites, like a North Pole and a South Pole, right? And we got to have both. One can't function without the other. If all of a sudden the North Pole was gone, then the world is just spinning off into space and destroying itself. And same thing with the South Pole. So they've got to work together here. Right? And okay, yeah, there's a tension between the two, right, to hold everything together. But let's take this from the North Pole to the South Pole. Let's take it to maybe different thoughts, different ideas, different needs. We all know as project managers, folks, that our job is to satisfy the needs and expectations of the stakeholders, right? But we got a lot of stakeholders out there, a whole ton of stakeholders, and those needs don't necessarily match up. Right? So trying to hold that all together when you have opposing needs gets really difficult. So from a mindset standpoint, what we need to do here is not look at it as either or, which is more important, either the North Pole or the South Pole. Well, it's not either or, it's both and. We have to look at both the North Pole and the South Pole, right? So it's just something that as we go through this, keep that in mind, both and. Okay, and the objective is to figure out how can we get the both, or how can we get the best of both of these opposites here, because they can be opposite. All right. Now, what we want to do is get the positives out of all that and avoid the limits of each of the different poles, if you will, all right? Because there's going to be some negatives, right? And as Michael was talking about in making some decisions and dealing with problems and things like that, there's going to be some challenges to all of that. So what we want to do is we want to try to limit the negative as much as we possibly can and gain the positives as much as we can. Right? So if we can do that, and we can, what we're going to get is a better picture, a more complete picture of what's going on and how we might be able to deal with that. Okay? Now, one of the challenges here is to a little bit changing your mindset here of that. Well, let's just call them the other side, right? For right now, right? And the other side will have their view of things, and they may be resisting. Henry, I was looking at the chat before I started talking here, and you had a really good comment about change management, and you said you don't call it change management, you call it adaptation management, which I had never thought of. But I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna steal that, because that's a great way to look at it. People, change is tough, and Michael said that too in his presentation. Right? So how do we adapt to this change? And it is never easy for humans. So one of the things that we kind of want to try to do is to use the power of the team of people, of the people working on a project, or whoever your stakeholders are. All right. So let's take a look at how we might be able to use that a little bit. Okay. On all this. Now, let me just give you some examples of polarities here. Right. And I'm not going to obviously go through all of these. Well, I'll read them, but I'm not going to go through each one of them. But this is kind of where we're going. But these are things that are kind of in opposition, but you need both of them. You need some amount of stability, but if we don't change, then that's going to be a problem. At the end of this presentation, folks, which hopefully Matt and Bill, you can make this presentation available to folks if they don't already have it downloaded. I've got a couple
we sure can.
Okay, awesome. I've got a couple of books that I'm recommending, and one of the books that I'm recommending is it's it's got the coolest title ever. It's one of my favorite titles of any book. It's called Surfing the Edge of Chaos. Okay? And the subtitle of that is Laws of Nature and the New Laws of Business. So what they talk about here is how important, however you want to call it, staying ahead of the curve, or just changing with the times. You had a question about artificial intelligence. Well, Michael said, well, hey, it's coming, whether you want it to or not, right? So we got to be ready to change with the times, even though the stability aspect would be really nice. But if you stay the same, folks, you're going to fall behind, is the thing. So, that's just an example of a polarity. You got to be able to handle both. All right, individual accomplishment versus teamwork. Well, you got to have both, right? Specifics, being very, very specific on like a contract, but also allowing innovation by your vendors, let's say. How do you do that? Because sometimes you're going to have to give up some control and empower your team, but you still got to have enough control as a project manager to make sure that the thing gets done. Big picture and detail. So see the forest and see the trees out of all this. You got to be able to do both. There's change and stability again. There's that word change. We're going to see that a lot. So I guess I had that in twice, but just as a separate thing here. Here's one that a lot of people are going through right now: in-person and virtual. In-person work and virtual work. And how does that get handled? Well, there's upsides to both of those, right? There's downsides to both of those. How do we deal with that? Who makes the decisions? Is it a centralized decision? And Michael in his presentation was talking about the flag officer making the decision, right? In business, it's maybe a little bit more decentralized decision. Is it a good or a bad, or is it a, hey, we got to figure out what's going on and figure out what makes the most sense? Stress versus stress and tranquility, right? We kind of need. It's nice. It's nice to take a vacation every once in a while, right, and have a little bit more tranquil life. But we also need to kind of be on our toes from time to time, and that adds to the excitement. That might be a conversation that you had this morning when you were talking about conflict a little bit, because conflict is not necessarily bad, folks. And I don't know whether you talked about the Tuckman model, the stages of team development or not. Most people haven't heard of the Tuckman model, but they have heard of forming, storming, norming, and performing. And in the storming stage, that's where there's going to be some conflict. Not necessarily bad, because that's your area of highest creativity. So a little bit of stress sometimes is not a bad thing, right? And we have the old art and science, and I don't think anybody would disagree too much, maybe with the numbers, but there's a large percentage of project management that is art. It's probably a larger percentage art than it is science, right? But we having both of those is good, right? And then I always like to think of Myers-Briggs. If you've ever taken a Myers-Briggs type indicator, introvert and extrovert, it's not good or bad. It's just, where do you get your energy from, right? Intuitive and sensing, right? What's the next one? Thinking or feeling. And then the last one is judging and perceiving. So those are all polarities that you would have, right? Self-interest and shared interest, just a couple of others. Leadership and management. You got to have both leadership and management, because leadership focuses on the vision and the future, and management focuses on the day-to-day. So those are just some examples of polarities that you may have not really thought of them in that term, but when you start thinking, okay, well, what's more important, this or that? Well, it's not either or, it's both and. Think of it this way, folks. Here's another one. Here's a very simple example. Okay? And by the way, the other book that I'm recommending at the end of this is a book called Polarity Management by Barry Johnson. And this is one of his examples. Right? Think about it this way: breathing in, breathing out. Now, what's more important? Well, if all you do is breathe in, right? Well, all right, you get a lot of oxygen. That's good, but you can't just keep breathing in. You'll explode, right? You got to get rid of some of that, some of that carbon dioxide that comes out, right? So, breathing in is good, but breathing out gets rid of the carbon dioxide. So the breathing in is good to get the oxygen. The breathing out is good to get rid of the CO2. Okay? If all you're doing is breathing in, you get too much carbon dioxide. If all you're doing is breathing out, well, first of all, you can't do that. But if all you do is breathe out, you're going to not have enough oxygen for yourself. and you're going to die, right? So that's just not good, right? Yeah, so it's the both and framework. Exactly right, Mary. Okay? So what we want to try to do here, folks, is to gain and maintain the benefits of one side, right? But in order to do that, you've got to pursue the benefits of the other side. So what we want to do is we want to get the benefits of both sides. Okay? So that's kind of where we're going here, working with the polarity. It's not if you're going to manage polarity, because whether you realized it or not, folks, you've been dealing with this stuff pretty much your entire life. Maybe you didn't think of it as polarities because you hadn't heard that term yet, but you've maybe thought of it as a problem, like in person and virtual, or control and empowerment. Maybe you thought of that as a problem. I don't know. Right now, what we're going to do though is we're going to kind of change the mindset a little bit, because you've been dealing with it, and it's not if you're going to deal with the polarity, but how well do you manage and deal with that polarity. Okay? So this is where we're going to have a little process for ourselves, and we're going to try to figure out the upside and the downside of the polarity, of each polarity, the positive and the negatives, if you will, right? And what we want to do is have a way to create some sensitivity to the downside. Okay? And then, as Michael was talking about, and Henry, as you said in your chat, the adaptation of change, the adaptation management here, we have to anticipate and work with resistance. Now, you may have heard of a guy named Machiavelli, okay? And just in great transparency here, Bill, thank you very much for the introduction. One of the things that was not in my introduction was that in college I was a history major, so no marketable skills when I left school. Right? But because I was a history major, I've never really done anything with my history degree, but I toy with it from time to time and read books and stuff like that.
At least you won't repeat your mistakes.
Yeah, well, in theory, all right, I won't exactly, but you may have heard of a guy named Machiavelli. Okay? I think everybody's probably heard of him. He wrote a book, and gosh, I think this was in the 1500s. I don't remember exactly when he wrote it. Today we would call it a white paper, but he wrote this treatise for a prince, and the book, surprisingly enough, is called The Prince, right? And these are guidelines for the prince. And one of my favorite quotes from Machiavelli, and this is in chapter 6 of The Prince, and I'm just going to read it to you because I've got it hanging up on my wall right next to me. It says, "It should be borne in mind that there is nothing more difficult to arrange, more doubtful of success, and more dangerous to carry through than initiating changes. The innovator makes enemies of all those who prospered under the old order, and only lukewarm support is forthcoming from those who would prosper under the new." So now think about that, folks. That was written like 400 or 500 years ago, right? Guess what? Humans really haven't changed all that much, right? Change is difficult, right? There's gonna be resistance to this. So what we have to do is figure out, okay, where is the resistance coming from? How do we deal with that? Where is our resistance coming from? How do we deal with that? How do we change that inner conflict, if you will, to a positive tool for our use as opposed to something negative? Now, in order to do that, we have to be willing to move. And one of the things that Michael said in his presentation right before I got on, as I was listening in, he said, we got to be open to change. Okay, we got to be willing to move. Right? That means us, right? And if we can bring some other people along with us, that's great too, right? But what we want to try to do is aim for the best of both worlds, of both poles, and get the positive of both poles. Okay? So to do this, folks, it's not just a decision. It's not an event. It's a lot like project management, right? It's a process. Right? So it's not a one-time thing. It's kind of an all-the-time thing. Right? Um, so it requires ongoing decision making. Okay? So how do we show this? Great question. Right? And by the way, in terms of questions, folks, please feel free to open up your mics. and ask a question at any point in time. Put something in the chat box if you'd like, and I'll be happy to address it then. Right? But how do we show this? Well, this is called a polarity map. And it's very simple. Just a rectangle here into 4 quadrants. And we're going to put one polarity on one side, on the left-hand side, let's say, and another polarity on the other side. And then up at the top, we'll just put our vision for, what we're trying to do. So why would we want to hold both of these polarities? So let's look at a specific here. Right? Here's one of my favorite polarities: structure and flexibility. Have you ever been into your manager's office and had your manager say, okay, I want you to do this, and I want you to do it this way everywhere. It's got to be done exactly this way everywhere. And you walk out of your manager's office. Have you ever had this thought that, wow, this would work really good in New York, and it would work okay in DC, and it'd be fine down in Atlanta, but this is not going to work so well, out in Albuquerque. That's just not going to work out there, right? You ever had this situation where they put too much structure in place, right? So you can't deal with the situation. It'll work some places, but it won't work everywhere. Right? Well, that's a challenge, right? Now, on the other hand, if you've ever been into your manager's office and have them give you something to do, and you say, well, okay, well, how do you want me to get it done? They go, well, I don't know. I don't care. Just figure it out, right? And you walk out of their office and you go, how do I deal with this? This has never happened before. I don't know. They've given you too much flexibility. They haven't given you any guidance here. Right? So that's not necessarily always good either. So what we have here, folks, is we have a polarity to manage, to deal with. We have the opposites to hold, and try to get the benefits of both structure and flexibility. Now, the way that this works is up at the top here. We'll put, and let's go to the structure side. So in the upper left-hand quadrant, we will put down, exactly right, Mary, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to find the sweet spot. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Right? So up in the upper left-hand quadrant, what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out all of the positives for structure. All the positives for structure. Okay? And in the upper right-hand corner, what we're going to do is we're going to try to find out all of the positives for flexibility. And then what we'll do is at the bottom, we'll try to figure out all of the bottom left-hand quadrant. We'll try to figure out all the negatives to structure. And in the bottom right-hand quadrant, we'll try to figure out all the negatives to flexibility. All right, now here's what I want you to do, folks. With the folks that we have left, and I think when I started talking, we had about 60, 65, 66 people left. Right?
Yeah, you're still at 67. You're looking good.
How about that? I haven't lost 3/4 of people already in 10 minutes. All right. Well, I'm doing all right then. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. On the assumption, folks. Whoops. Sorry. Hold on. Went too fast. On the assumption that we have birthdays fairly evenly split with the 67 people that are left. If your birthday is anywhere from January 1st to June 30th, you are my structure people. January 1st to June 30th, you love structure. Structure is fantastic. Right? If your birthday is anywhere from July 1st to December 31st, you are my flexibility people. You love flexibility. Okay? Now, here's what I want you to do. And I'm not going to give you a whole lot of time to do this. Grab a piece of paper, grab a pen or a pencil or a crayon, something. And what I want you to do, and I'll give you like 30 seconds to do this. Structure people, see if you can come up with 5 positives to structure. Flexibility people, see if you can come up with 5 positives to flexibility. Right? So just go real fast, write it down. Spelling doesn't count. So I'll give you 30 seconds to write down 5 positives structure people and 5 positives flexibility people. You got 10 more seconds. See if you can write down 2 or 3 more. All right, and time's up. All right, now, structure people. You love structure. You hate flexibility. Hate, hate, hate. All right. So what I'm going to want you to do next, structure people, is I want you to write down all of the negative aspects to flexibility. Why would we not want to be flexible? Right? And flexibility people, you love flexibility so much. That's awesome, but you hate, hate, hate structure. Why is structure such a bad thing? Right? Now, so here's what I want you to do. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay. And go ahead on your piece of paper. Awesome. We're already getting some stuff written in there. On your piece of paper, I'll give you 30 seconds. Structure people, write down 5 negatives to flexibility. Flexibility people, write down 5 negatives to structure. 30 seconds, go for it. Ran out of room there. Okay, you got 10 more seconds. See if you can come up with 2 more, folks. Just on your piece of paper there. All right, and time's up. Good. Now, what we would do, whoever that was writing in rigid and set in their ways, what we would do is we would put the positives for structure in the upper left-hand corner, the positive for flexibility in the upper right-hand corner, the negatives for structure in the bottom left-hand quarter quadrant, and the negatives for flexibility in the bottom right-hand quadrant. Right. Now, so we have 2 different sides here. Right. Questions so far? I know we don't know what we're doing with it yet, but questions so far. All right, now what I'm going to do, let me see if we can move forward here. Okay, so let me see if I can erase the stuff that's in here. All right, just so we can have kind of a clear view. Good. So whoever wrote that down, you're doing a good job. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. All right, so now everybody's got their own thoughts. In the interest of time, so that we can get you all out of here, here are some things that other teams, other folks have written down. And so read these, just look them over pretty quickly, see if you've got some of these. And then we'll do something with this. All right. So I'll give you 30 seconds to read down through this stuff. Okay, you got about 10 seconds left. All right, and time's up. Now, if you haven't read down through them all, that's fine. This is just an example, all right? But here's what I want you to do, folks, and you're on your honor here, okay? I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Try not to go to sleep on me, but close your eyes for a moment, okay? And keep them closed, and I'll tell you when to open, right? Everybody got their eyes closed? All right, good. Now, let's just pretend that wherever it is that we're working, we wanted to have a highly productive environment. Okay? So we wanted this thing to go really good. Would it be, and you don't have to answer out loud, this is a rhetorical question, but just think about it. Would it be a good idea to have some good governance? Would it be a good idea to be adaptable to situations? Would it be a good idea to be predictable? Would it be a good idea to have more empowerment and trust? Would it be a good idea to have clear ownership, but be able to make fast decisions? Would it be a good idea to make sure everybody had shared and the same goals and objectives, but be able to handle ambiguity and develop good, solid leaders, not just managers? Would that be good? You can just kind of answer that in your head, okay? would it be bad? Keep your eyes closed. Would it be bad to have less synergy going on, or slow or no decisions? Or would it be bad to have duplication of work or unpredictability? Would it be bad to have managers with limited vision? Would it be bad to have less control when governing a large team? Would it be bad to not have a clear chain of command and less creativity and innovation? So just think about that for a second. What would be good to have? What would be bad? All right, good. Now you can open up your eyes. Now, what I just did, folks, was when I said, would it be good if we could do certain things? I read from the upper half of this polarity map. When I said, would it be bad? I read from the bottom half of this polarity map. And what I'm assuming is that when I read the positives of all this stuff, you kind of went, yeah, duh. Well, of course, Bruce, yeah, right? When I read the bad stuff, you probably went, yeah, that'd be stupid. Who would do any of that sort of thing, right? So without looking at it, you stayed in the upper half for the positives and you said, nope, not good stuff for the lower half, right? And what I said was, why would we want to do that? Well, we would want to do that to create a productive environment. So here's the way that this looks, folks. And that's I didn't do such a marvelous job of it, but that's supposed to be the infinity symbol, right? An ongoing type thing. Okay? And if you look at where we have this, we want to have it be positive more often than it's negative. So we want to try to stay up in that upper half. The objective is to get the positives, but spend limited time in the negatives. Now, how do we do that, though? I mean, I think, if somebody were to say, hey, positive and negative, we'd go, well, yeah, duh, of course, right? But how do we do that? Structure people, if you're really stuck on structure, you don't see the negatives of structure. You only see the positives. But you do see the negatives of flexibility. Now, flexibility people, you don't see the negatives of flexibility. You only see the positives. What you do see the negatives of, though, is the negatives of structure, because you like flexibility more. Right? So how do we use this to our advantage? Let's treat the other side, structure people, treat the flexibility people, not as your enemy, but as your early warning sign. Flexibility people, don't treat the structure people as your enemy. Treat them as your canary in the mine, if you will. Right? This is and you talked a little bit about risk management today. This would be your risk trigger, right? To know that, hey, we're about ready to head into something that could potentially be a threat, right? And yeah, it's a little bit, Mary, like playing the devil's advocate on your own, okay? And or using some other folks, right? So what we want to do is treat the other side not as the enemy, but as the early warning sign. The other side, will be the ones to let you know when you're going into the negative. You won't see it. They will. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to change our mindset. And what we now have is not an enemy. We have a valuable ally to achieve this overall vision, whatever it is, in this case, in this example, a productive environment. Questions on that? Yep, Catherine, I totally agree. Productive environments need both structure and flexibility. You spent 20 years trying to get people to understand that. These are not mutually exclusive, and they will need to understand triggers. Well, here you go. Polarity map. Nothing that I thought up. This is stuff from other folks when I've done this exercise with other people, right? So there you go, right? Now, if we do this, folks, or when we do this, let me put it this way, not if, we should definitely be doing this, okay? And there's a process involved, Carol. Nothing wrong with the process, right? But this way, sometimes if somebody is more visual in nature, this just kind of, boom, pops right out at them, right? I'm more visual in nature, so something like this definitely helps me see both sides of the polarity, So what's our benefits here? Well, to try to figure, sometimes it is a problem that we have to solve, folks, right? So we have to be aware of that. But what we want to do is we really want to think about, is this a problem that needs to be solved, or is this a polarity that needs to be managed on an ongoing basis? Okay, because if it's a problem to solve, then let's solve it. But if it's a polarity to manage, it's not going to be solvable, folks. You don't solve structure and flexibility. You need both, right? You don't solve breathing in and breathing out. The only way you solve that is you die, right? So that's not going to work too well for us, right? But what we can do is we can save some time and energy, right? And this helps us, look at folks instead of the enemy. This helps us maybe understand their resistance to change that you want to make, because we can take a look at, well, what are they seeing as the negatives? How do we deal with that? How do we stay out of the negatives? And from that standpoint, it can increase the effectiveness of whatever you're doing. It can increase your effectiveness as a negotiator or as a three-party mediator of some sort. And maybe take all these problems that are on our plate and realize that, okay, we don't have as many problems as we thought. We got a whole bunch of polarities that we have to deal with. How are we going to do that? But we can minimize the problems as much as we possibly can and make better decisions out of this. And it's like somebody said a little bit earlier, what we're trying to do here is find the balance between the two. Okay? So I know you all want to get out of here, so just some final thoughts on this, right? And this is coming a little bit from certainly from the polarity management book that I mentioned, but also from the Surfing the Edge of Chaos book, right? Sometimes people, fear the unknown, right? Or they fear the other side. And if you fear getting stuck on the other side for any reason, then what happens is you get stuck in your side, and you start going into the negative, and you don't see that, because all you see is the positive. Well, we don't want to do that. What we want to try to do is try to get out of that unstuckedness, if you will, right? Because the more you're stuck in the pole, the more you experience the downside of that pole, right? So what we want to do is, in order to get the benefit of one side of this, we've got to pursue the benefits of the other side of this. So it's a both and. And when you try to manage a polarity as a problem, it's not going to work, folks. The larger system is going to lose, because you're just going to keep trying to solve the problem and solve the problem and solve the problem and get more and more and more frustrated. Okay. One of the things in the book, Surfing the Edge of Chaos, it talks about nothing breeds chaos more than stagnation. Because if you stay the same, you are not the same person that you were, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, whenever, right? You are not the same person. You have moved, right? So if you're stagnant in one area, that's going to breed more chaos than you want, right? So what we want to try to do is open our view to do things like achieving our goals and our vision. This is going to help us build relationships. And the idea behind today's session, folks, was to pivot your purpose, right? I would add to that, pivot your purpose and pivot with purpose, because this is a great way to innovate. So I will leave, let me see if there's any questions here, folks. Okay, I will leave you with one thought. Which is more important, planning or action? I'll make that a rhetorical question. Okay? Now, a lot of people would say, well, hey, we're project managers. That's what we do, is we plan, right? We got to plan. Okay, well, I agree. There's a certain amount of planning that has to happen, right? But what if all you do is plan? Then you never get anywhere. So other people would say, well, we got to take action. If we don't take action, then nothing gets done. Okay, well, what if we take action, but we don't have a plan? So folks, this is another one of these polarities. It's not either we plan or take action. We have to both plan and take action. So treat your day today, folks, as kind of like your planning session. It's all been a huge waste of time if you don't now go out and do something with it. Try some of this stuff that you talked about today. You don't have to try it all, but try some of it and see what happens. I'll just go to the next page, and then Matt, I see you have your hand up. let me just, I'll close with this and then see what Matt's got. There's my contact information, folks. Yes, I still have an AOL address for two reasons. One is that I've had it forever and it works and it's free and it does what I need it to do. But the real reason I still have it is because it drives my sons crazy. So if it really bugs you that I've got an AOL address, let me know and I'll give you my Gmail address and stuff like that. But that's the one that I normally use. There are the two resources. And Matt, you had your hand up, so let me go ahead and see if you have a question there.
Yeah, just going back to your final shot there in terms of plan and action, where do you fall at with sunk cost? And I think right now with software so rapidly available and coding being done by AI,
Yeah.
it's just easy to move on from things.
Well, yeah. Well, in terms of sunk costs, they're sunk, right? They're already gone no matter what you do.
But if you totally pivot and abandon the solution, then you're starting over cost wise, where
Well,
like it would probably be more affordable to fix it than totally jump ship. But
well,
just want to see your
that's where you
thoughts.
have to do. That's where you have to go back and do a benefit cost analysis again, and take a look at it and use your present value aspects and see what see what the benefits are. It's like, hey, do you keep an old car that's breaking down a little bit more often than you'd like, or do you go out and buy a new car? Right? Well, I don't know. Right? I don't have an answer for that. But sunk costs are sunk, whether you go with something new or whether you continue with what you've been doing. That doesn't factor into your decisions. And then the other thing that Michael had said before was, hey, you're going to make decisions, and some of those are going to be wrong. So then you make another decision. Yeah, obviously we want to have a certain amount of planning before we take action. But if all we do is planning, folks, then you get analysis paralysis or planning and paralysis, whatever you want to call it. At some point in time, we got to take action. Now, where that point is, I don't know, right? That's the old project management answer to any project management question in any situation at any time in any industry. It depends, right? But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a consideration here. Okay. Bill wants to know how long I've had my AOL address. How old is AOL, Bill? I've had it since then, since the days of you got mail type stuff, right? So yeah, and I keep all my cars once they're paid for too until they don't run anymore. So, so Matt, did that semi answer your question? Or
Yep, sure did.
all right.
And yeah, we can't thank you enough for your time. I know the last slot of the day is not the most appealing, but you energized the crowd, and the fact that we had everybody stay on speaks to your topic and acumen. So thank you again.
All right. Well, no problem. Thank you. Thank you all for joining me. And Bill, I'll let you and Matt finish it up, and I'll shut up. But please feel free, folks, if you've got any questions or anything like that, to give me a call, shoot me an email, and happy to answer all of this
So
stuff.
I'm glad you could do this. I mean, it was great having Carl start the thing and you wrap it up. That's you make a good 1-2 punch team. So
Thanks, Bill.
Okay. So this wraps up our summer education day. The survey link will be emailed, but that was also in chat for those who wanted to get ahead a little bit. We appreciate the 10 minutes to give us feedback.
Yep.
We want to make sure that we're delivering value to you as a member for your $20 a year. And even if you're not a member yet, hopefully today made you consider joining. So, and PDUs and recordings and slides on the YouTube channel and the website are my top priorities. So definitely before tomorrow morning.
hey,
And
Mike, you might have found your retirement career here. That was a very good presentation.
Hey, thanks, Bill. It was I enjoyed that. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. But I'm retired. I'm just saying.
everybody has a price.
That's right. But thanks
Okay.
again.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks to all of our attendees. Thank you for being members. And we'll be back in person the first Wednesday of September, which is after Labor Day, and Wednesday, September 3rd. So stay tuned for that. We'd love to see all the people on the line be in person if they can be. And have a great evening. Stay
Bye.
motivated.
Great job, Matt, Bill.
Thank you,
Well done.
everybody. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.